The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The New York Giants land their veteran starter for 2025 in Russell Wilson.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast.
The Giants have signed or will be signing Russell Wilson, quarterback Russell Wilson, to a one-year deal worth $21 million with $10.5 million guaranteed. So we're going to talk about that, why that move was made, how this all came about. We'll talk about what this move potentially means for the draft. And then we'll also talk about what it means for the future of the New York Giants quarterback position. So let's get into everything because we've got a lot of ground to cover. All right, Russell Wilson, as I have been saying all along, that it was a matter of whether it was going to be Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. Now, coming into this whole thing, you kind of got the impression, and it was reported elsewhere, that Aaron Rodgers was leaning more towards the Steelers. Now, even though the Giants left the door open for Aaron Rodgers, to my understanding is I don't believe he had a visit with the Giants. So therefore, no visit. The chances of them signing him probably weren't going to happen because Aaron Rodgers is just that type of guy who, wants to explore everything, get a vibe for how everything works inside and that sort of thing. So Russell Wilson always, in my mind at least, was the favorite to sign with the Giants if they could work out the money. And the money, of course, was the big holdup, as it always is. So Russell Wilson, after weighing his options, 1 year, $21.5 million. That's how much the deal can max out at. More importantly, the Giants get a guy in here who meets the criteria of the quarterbacks they have been pursuing, the veteran quarterbacks they've been pursuing this offseason. Matthew Stafford, Rodgers, Wilson, Joe Flacco, all quarterbacks with Super Bowl experience, winning Super Bowl experience. Winston, of course, the exception, but Winston, once he signed for that 2-year deal worth up to $8 million, actually, it's worth up to 16 if he hits all the incentives, but it's for $8 million base. You knew that was backup money. You knew that another quarterback was coming. And look, I know a lot of you were thinking, oh, it's going to be a Shedeur Sanders if he falls to the Giants at 3. Folks, the Giants are under pressure to win now. All right, jobs need to be saved. Joe Shane, Brian Dable, they are on the hot seat. They've got a rough schedule of opponents coming up. There was virtually no way they were going to put a rookie quarterback out there. It just wasn't going to happen. It didn't make sense. The Giants, like I said, they need to win some games. They need to show John Mara, Steve Tisch progress at the end of this coming season. If they don't, they're out. It's as simple as that. So we'll talk a little bit more about the draft in the next segment, but what Russell Wilson, it's interesting. I know there had been a report, I believe by the New York Post, where the feeling was that Jameis Winston would be a better mentor than Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson tends to, or at least it's been reported that he keeps more to himself than Jameis Winston, who's a little bit more outgoing. Well, now the Giants have the best of both worlds. They have a guy who can come in, win them some games, hopefully. Winston can also come in and win games if they need him to, but they don't have to start a rookie if they plan to get one. All right. They can roll with Wilson, and if he's hurt, they roll with Winston, and they are protected. That was the plan. Like I've been saying, last year, they were going to roll with the veteran quarterbacks. If they had been able to draft the quarterback, let the kids sit. That is the plan this year, assuming that they get a young quarterback. So just looking at the personalities, and we haven't met, Jameis Winston yet. We haven't spoken to Russell Wilson yet. I believe it's going to be next week at some point. We will hear from both gentlemen once they officially sign with the team. But Jameis Winston, you figure, is going to be the more outgoing one, the one who, will help a young quarterback. That's not to say that Russell Wilson won't, but Russell Wilson, again, the feeling was, or the report was, that he's a little bit more introverted, but still a team player, a good addition. I'm very happy with this addition. Quite frankly, we talked about Aaron Rodgers. I never really got the impression he was going to come here. They left the door open for him, but look, I just didn't think he would be an ideal fit for the culture that they're building in that locker room. They need guys who, are going to be here, who are not going to, be in the headlines for things that they say and all that stuff. And more importantly, this was important for the Giants to wrap this up as far as the veteran quarterback angle went. And the reason for that, obviously, is because next month on the 21st, the offseason program starts. If you were going to sit there and wait and wait and wait for Aaron Rodgers to make up his mind, chances are he might not have been in for the voluntary program. And it is voluntary. I understand that. But ideally, when you're trying to build a culture, you would like for your quarterback to be in the building, watching film with teammates, getting to know, what do they like? What don't they like? Right. So the Giants are basically starting from scratch at this quarterback position. Tommy DeVito, the one guy who's the carryover, but his future, I think he'll be on the roster, but that's not a slam dunk. But you wanted to get the veterans in here, which they have, and I like this move. I really, really like this move. I realize Russell Wilson has some flaws to his game. There are some concerns with, little things about how the Steelers deployed him last year as primarily a short passer, as far as, the depth of his target. But I think Russell Wilson will do well in this Giants offense. Let's talk about what the signing of Russell Wilson means for the Giants and their draft. Folks, there's a reason why in my mock draft, I went for Abdul Carter. All right. I have not gotten the impression since the combine. I always tell you, let's get to the combine and we'll see what news comes out of it, what information comes. The vibe I was getting from the combine coverage was that the Giants were not really, what's the word I want? That they were lukewarm about the quarterback class this year. All right. So I got the impression that going quarterback at 3 was not necessarily the direction the Giants were going to go. But that said, they had to do their due diligence. They had to go to the pro days. They had the top 30 visits. They did all the scouting work. They have to do due diligence. All right. For them to say, we're not going to, go for a quarterback. Well, you don't know unless you do your due diligence. So coming out of the combine, initially I thought, okay, at 3, if he's on the board, Travis Hunter, which would make sense. Now, the signing of Paulson Adebo probably means that the Giants might not go Travis Hunter. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that, but the reason why I have been picking Abdul Carter in my mock drafts, and I've done it now for the New York Giants on SI Publisher mock draft. I've done it here on the show. And spoiler alert, I did it also on the Locked On NFL mock draft that's coming up, I think, in a week or two. The reason why I picked Abdul Carter, the Giants have been putting more of an emphasis on building up the fronts, the pit guys, the trenches. Abdul Carter, if his medicals check out, because again, you have to check and see what the story is with that foot ailment that popped up at the medical checks during the combine. But if Abdul Carter is over that and he's good to go, I think he's the pick. All right. I'm not changing my mind on that as of right now. Now, if I get more information to where it warrants changing my mind, I will certainly, admit to that. But right now, I think he's the pick. Could Travis Hunter be the pick at 3? He could. I mean, you can get great value. You can play him obviously at corner or, wide receiver or both. I believe the Giants view him more as a cornerback. And again, now that they've signed Paulson Adebo, what do you do? Do you bench Deontay Banks? How do you work it if you're going to view him primarily as a cornerback? So I I don't know. I just don't know that that's going to be the direction they go. All right. So what about quarterback? Will the Giants now not draft a quarterback? Will they totally punt on it till next year? Here's what I think is going to happen. All right. The Giants, if they stay put at 3 and grab Abdul Carter, and again, if Abdul Carter's medicals check out, I think he's the pick. But the Giants can also potentially move down if they want. If there's somebody who really, really wants Shedeur Sanders, willing to trade up, they're concerned that somebody, in front of them might take him. If I'm the Giants, I trade down if Abdul Carter's medicals don't check out. Okay. I trade down. I get more assets to use for next year, because here's the thing, folks. The Giants have signed, I want to say, over 10 new free agents. Okay. They have only lost, I think, 3. They are not getting comp picks next year as of right now. So if they have to trade up next year to get a quarterback from a class that is going to be deeper in terms of talent, in terms of options, they really don't have a whole lot of capital, short of, emptying out what they've got to move up if they need to. So I would not be stunned. Again, if they don't go Carter at number 3, I would not be stunned if the Giants trade down a few spots. I do not think they will trade out of the top 10, but maybe they will look to swap places with a team behind them that might be interested in getting Shedeur Sanders. All right. Now, the other scenario I see, obviously, is to get a quarterback this year, but either on day 2 or day 3. Now, Jackson Dart has been mentioned as a possibility for the Giants, but the more I think about it, if his stock is rising, I don't know necessarily if the Giants are going to be able to get him. Okay, now, does it make sense for the Giants to trade back into the bottom of the first round now that they have Wilson? You might make that argument if you're really, really high on Jackson Dart. But I think in this case, the Giants might look to a developmental quarterback. And the guy that I'm thinking is Tyler Shuck. All right. I know his pro day was this week. The Giants were on hand for that. I believe Joe Chain was part of the Giants group that went to see his pro day. I think he now becomes in play. All right. Tyler Shuck has been, his draft stock has been rising. So I think that's somebody who, if you want to grab a quarterback on day 2, or if he's there on day 3, the beginning of day 3, that might be a guy to take a look at. They don't need him, if they do take a quarterback, they don't need him to play this year because they've got 2 veterans who can carry the heavy lifting. And again, this is exactly what they were trying to do last year when they were trying to get Drake May or Jaden Daniels. The plan was to sit those guys, let the veterans do the heavy lifting, and then transition the following year. So the way everything is set up right now, Wilson is here on a 1-year deal, so he becomes a free agent after 2025. You still have Winston on board as a backup salary. If you get a developmental quarterback and the guy develops to where you could say, okay, we can maybe run with this guy next year, now you've got your future. If the kid doesn't work out, you go back to the drawing board, you take another swing in the draft next year.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also look at some futures, like for Major League Baseball. How about that? The most popular future bet in all of Major League Baseball. The Cincinnati Reds to hit their over on the win total. FanDuel has the Reds over under 79.5. My producer would like to mention that he has smashed this over, FYI. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
Russell Wilson has officially signed with the Giants, leaving the Steelers with basically Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers with the Steelers.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Nick, what is your first reaction to seeing Russell Wilson's contract? Initially, Adam Schefter put out $21 million, but when you look at how much of that was incentives and it's really just 10.5, what's your opinion on how things played out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably about what
Nick,
I
you're muted.
expected. Right. I mean, listen, like Russ was always going to be a guy that didn't have a ton of options. And so, he wasn't ever dangling like the retirement thing like Aaron Rodgers has been dangling either. And so, when it comes to what I thought Russ was going to get, I mean, $10.5 million guaranteed plus a ton of incentives, it's probably about right. I know he was probably asking for more, around 20, but that's kind of just where he is right now. Like, listen, Russ has a skill set that fits him. He's got that moon ball still. It's still good. He's still got his deep ball going. But he's also a guy that you have to cater your offense to. You have to build your offense around a little more than most quarterbacks. And so also the Giants fit what I think he's kind of looking for in some regards, at least. He's got the sure topic. I think the sure path right now to the starting role. We'll see that they could draft a quarterback still. I think that is still something that could hurt him there if he wants to start all year. But for the Steelers, this contract is still not bad, though. I mean, they get a 5th-round compensatory pick, and then if he does play and hits these incentives, they have a chance to hit another 3rd-round pick. Same thing with Fields. If Fields can play all year, they could have 3 3rd-round compensatory picks if these things hit. I can't remember the last time a team's had 3 compensatory picks that are 3rd-rounders. So that could really help the Steelers in that regard, too.
So basically, you're telling Steelers fans they still should be rooting for Russell Wilson at this point.
Ride with Fields and Wilson, because if both of them hit their incentives, they're going to be 3rd-round compensatory picks. That's legit, man. 3 3rd-round comp picks like that gives you a lot of wheel and deal power if you're trying to trade up for, say, I don't know, a quarterback.
No, but that's where I'm at with this is that, one, the $10.5 million, that makes a lot more sense for what 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 he was probably going for there. But Nick, and we're going to talk about this in the next segment because the opening topic of this show was going to be about Bob Labriola's comments on Steelers.com. Bob Labriola, of course, working for Steelers.com, and he indicates that severed ties were involved in the decision of and why the Steelers aren't heavily pursuing to just bring back Russell Wilson and why they're more interested in Aaron Rodgers. And you can wait for that segment for us to talk about that. But to me, again, it just shows if the Steelers weren't willing to just pay Russell Wilson $10.5 million, I think it does kind of show there was something there that they said, like, we're just not going to roll that back.
There's no doubt about it. There was a fracture that happened here. I think it was definitely due to. I don't even think it was due to necessarily the losing streak. I think a lot of it was probably the report that leaked to Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about taking away his freedom at the line of scrimmage. I do think that was a big part of it. I had heard that right after that coaches were pretty upset about that. And I think that was a mend that never really kind of got broken, got repaired, and they felt like it couldn't be. Clearly, I mean, I don't even think Russ was their D option. I wonder, even if Aaron Rodgers had gone elsewhere, if they would have even circled back to Russ. I think pretty clearly he was low on the totem pole, and all of this kind of public posturing about we want to bring Russ back, et cetera, was basically word play just to kind of have leverage against Justin Fields where they were trying to negotiate. So yeah, something absolutely happened there between someone and Russell Wilson, because it felt like this was not happening. If they are willing to wait out Aaron Rodgers for 2 weeks before pivoting to Russ, there's something that happened there. Something fractured these two sides apart.
Now, again, we'll get more to that in the next segment, but let's circle back here. Does this basically mean Aaron Rodgers is the Steelers quarterback? Or, Nick, do you still see the chance of him either retiring or the Vikings going back against what everyone thought was going on there and him finding a way to not be on the Steelers roster? Because at this point, it's like the Steelers are his last landing spot.
I don't really see him going to the Vikings. I don't think the Vikings are going to be interested. I think they're going to ride the J.J. McCarthy train. I think that's the way they should go. You need to see what he is. But here's the thing about Rodgers. I guess he has 3 options. I guess his 3 options are Pittsburgh retirement or just wait. I guess he could just wait and hope someone gets hurt in camp or preseason and then sign there. But I don't think that's very likely with some of the things Rodgers brings to the table. And so Yeah, I think this feels just about right that he's probably going to be Pittsburgh Steelers. I think we felt that way for a while now, Chris, especially after he visited Pittsburgh. I think, listen, I don't think coming down to the facility for a visit is the type of thing a guy that wants to retire does.
Right.
That's not generally what happens. So if he's in on this, if he's fully ready to go, and I'm sure the Steelers brought that up in the discussions. All right, like, are you fully in? Are you ready to go? And as long as they got that assurance, I imagine this is probably going to get done. I don't know when. It could happen this week. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen 2 days before the draft. But I imagine that this will get done. It feels like Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers is pretty much an inevitability at some point.
Yeah, it's just the only thing that can stop it is him just being like, you know what, I don't want to do that, and I do think that if he wants one more hurrah, it's there. But still, the question will be, who knows when he does it? Nick? Several people have brought this up to me. The potential of this falling along the announcement coming with Pat McAfee's show's official Pittsburgh, episode in the tour that they're doing. What are the chances? Because I've heard a lot of people pose this theory. Oh, he's waiting until Pat McAfee comes to PPG Paints Arena so that he can do the announcement there. And I believe that happens on the 9th of April.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that being when this happens?
I mean, it would fit the MO. It would make sense. I also thought, the soft deadline I've kind of thrown out there is April 21st. April 21st is the start of the Steelers' is like voluntary workouts where they can come in to work out. I think that is a good deadline to look at too. So, I mean, listen, April 9th, if he's McAfee's surprise guest and announces, I'm signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, would anyone be stunned? No. But I also think if you want, if you kind of want to set a little soft deadline for yourself, April 21st, I think makes sense. I just think Rodgers has a lot of unique things that make him a little harder to work with right away in terms of his cadence, his hand signals, the new concepts that he's going to want to come in with the playbook to fit what he does. It's a little different than any other veteran quarterback. And you saw that the first year he was in the New York with the Jets, he was at like every OTA's practice. They actually canceled their mandatory minicamp because he was there like all the time through the voluntary phases, the OTAs. I know he wasn't around as much last year, and people are like, he's not going to show up. The history of what he's kind of done when he's gone to new places or the overhaul of a structure around him, he's shown up to these events. He's a very detail-oriented player in that regard. So that's why I throw the 21st out as kind of that soft, arbitrary deadline. Because also last time when he got traded to the Jets, it took until the week of the draft for that to happen. So I think that's probably around the deadline where I would expect this to happen. But nobody's going to be shocked if he at PPG Paints Arena, Pat McAfee goes, bring him on out, and they get him there, and then he just announces it. No one's going to be surprised,
Yeah, several people have asked me this, and I feel like, it's kind of like, I'm like, yeah, I could see it happening. I feel like it would be lame, but whatever. Like if whatever rocks your boat, you want to just make the announcement, do it for your friend who's been bringing you on his show. Like I get that'd be cool for him. So either way, this Russell Wilson signing does make it seem like Aaron Rodgers is the Steelers quarterback for 2025. The only thing that can stop it is if he doesn't want to be. And, but again, I think also it shows the Steelers, their willingness to just wait it out and just be like, we're not offering you any more money. You take this offer, or you figure, or you retire, you do what you want to do, but we have a plan and we will be good with it no matter what happens here. I think that shows, where the Steelers have been there.
Jimmy Butler returned to Miami on Tuesday night, but it was the team he left behind that was the story of the night.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast.
The Heat beat the Warriors in the Jimmy Butler return game. Look, David, I think players could talk about this just being another game, no emotions, just want to go out there and treat this just like anything else. It is clear to me in this game that the Heat took this one personally, especially Bam Adebayo, who outscored Jimmy 23-11 and was matched up on him for most of the night. And then being at the arena for this, I haven't felt that alive since Game 7 of the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals. I really thought about it. I was like, when was the last time I felt like a game had this much riding on it? And I had to go back to Game 7 against the Celtics in 2023 in the Eastern Conference Finals, just winner take all, right? And obviously that was a very different context, that the winner of that went to the NBA Finals. But in this game, it just felt, yeah, this is the one chance you get to play Jimmy Butler in this context, with him coming back home, with the emotions still being very raw. Yeah. And it just felt like, yeah, you're not winning a trip to the finals, but you are playing and competing for bragging rights. And I think that was palpable in the arena. And I think that the Heat players and their team, they said all the right things. They said it was just another game and all these things. But I don't buy it, because I watched that team play. They were more locked in than I've ever seen them play all season long.
This is probably the best game of the season. And I think from an emotional standpoint, it was clear that they were heavily invested in making sure that they won this game, and making a statement to Jimmy that he made a mistake, that they're angry at him, that they're disappointed in his behavior, that he let them down. And I think that's fair. And what are players and adult men going to say in this kind, especially athletes who are, prompted almost constantly to put up a front and put up a facade of, no, these things don't bother me. How many times have we heard it's a business, as they shrug off the fact that this team got traded, or a team traded them? And we've heard later on stories about players saying, yeah, it was hard, it was difficult, as they were going about their daily business, and all of a sudden they get a call from their agent or somebody, or they find out on ESPN that they've been traded. Like, these kinds of things are disappointing.
Luka cried, when he found out, it was, and so did every Dallas Mavericks fan. But it's that strips away the facade, to your point, of this is only a business. If all of these players react the way that they react, and that's fine. We shouldn't expect them to be robots at the same time either. But the ability to then harness those emotions and then deploy them and use them to your advantage, that to me is what was impressive from the Heat tonight.
Yeah, it was. I was not expecting this. I really thought going into this game, and I know that the Warriors were without Steph Curry, and we should add that is an incredible caveat.
Whatever.
There.
I don't care.
Okay. Regardless,
it's right.
Miami played a phenomenal game. It does matter. Like, in terms of the final outcome, who knows what it would have been like. But in terms of Miami's approach and how they were focused, I have not seen this team with this kind of laser-like precision and ability and just the emotional weight of everything, just being able to your point, harness and be able to use it as constructively and effectively as they did tonight. It was an impressive showing. And even when Golden State cut what was a sizable lead down to single digits,
20 to
Miami
8.
found a way to
20 to 8 at the end of the third quarter, and then they go on that little spurt.
Yes, and Davion Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins, Tyler Hero, like, they all found ways to step up in different ways, and it was really impressive to see a team that has just thrown away a lot of games. Like, during this 10-game losing streak, they found new ways to lose almost on every occasion, and it just kind of added up and added up. And we talked about this following the last win over the Charlotte Hornets. Yes, it's the lowly Hornets. I get it. But the lowly Hornets, they had contributed to Miami's 10-game losing streak. And Miami kind of reignited something during that win, figuring out how to win. Without that win against the Hornets, I don't know that they're able to win tonight. If they lost again to the Hornets, they probably would have just said, oh, we can't come back from this. But instead, they found a way at every opportunity to push Golden State, to find a way to kind of distance themselves, to add to a lead that was shrinking, and then just pile on and pile on. An incredible performance for this Miami Heat team. I'm really impressed.
And every time they would go a couple of possessions, they managed, and maybe Golden State would score once or twice and start cutting into that. Miami every time managed to get that relief bucket, whether it was Tyler Hero or Andrew Wiggins, maybe Davion Mitchell creating a steal and score in transition or whatever it was. And that was what was really missing during the 10-game losing streak, is like that would just snowball. It'd be, instead of 2 empty possessions, it would be 3, 4, 5, 6. And they would just be out of sorts completely. And in this game, they just found ways against, no Steph Curry, a very good Warriors defense. A very good Warriors defense for the season. And they didn't play well in this game, but you got to give a lot of credit to the Miami Heat for they could have come out flat. They could have done the whole, we're too we're too revved up on the emotions and we got to try to bring it all the way down and then come out flat. And I asked Eric Spoelstra about this after the game. I said, is that a skill to be able to kind of figure this out with the emotions, acknowledging that it's there and figuring out what it goes? And he even said, look, I think that you have to toe the line. You have to, it's a razor's edge of, if you're too emotional, you're kind of rabid and out of sorts and uncontrolled. And then if you try to dial it back too much, you come out flat. And they figured out a way to kind of walk that line the right way. On the flip side, I thought Jimmy Butler I was a little surprised by his performance in this game, but maybe I shouldn't have been, because Jimmy's whole thing always is I'm too cool for school. And he came out a little too cool for school. Oh, this game doesn't matter, and I'm watching the tribute video, and that's kind of nice and whatever. And then, he just kind of does the thing that Heat fans have seen him do when he's not totally engaged, which is pass up open shots, stand in the corner. He took 12 shots in this game, right? Yeah, 12 shots. Moses Moody took 13. Brandon Podziemski took 16. Jonathan Kuminga, who isn't even playing well lately, took 10 shots in this game, almost as much as Jimmy Butler. And this is a very similar trend to the stuff that we used to complain about when Jimmy Butler was in Miami. I'm not saying it was a bad trade. I'm not trying to make any big takeaways from it, but this was how we were used to seeing Jimmy Butler play in Kaseya Center.
Yeah, it's not the macro view. It's the fact that he was so out of sorts on a night when you probably expected him, and I know I certainly did, to be a lot more focused. I thought he was going to be matching Miami's energy, or at least what we saw from Miami tonight. I didn't think Miami was capable of this. So they've impressed me. But to the flip side of that, Jimmy came out a lot flatter than I thought he would, because I thought he would want to make a statement. Like, he would want to show him, you messed up. And he's used this. He's like,
I thought it was going to be like Minnesota Timberwolves practice Jimmy Butler. That's what I was expecting. Maybe not 40 points, not Michael Jordan against the Milwaukee Bucks Jimmy Butler, but like 24 points, 15 rebounds, like 12 assists,
key
just
possessions,
like 4 steals. Yeah.
To your question to Eric Spoelstra, like, Jimmy has made a career of harnessing those emotions. He fuels that. I've made the point before, and maybe I've belabored it a little bit too much, but like, players need something to motivate them over the course of an 82 game season, and even in the playoffs. And it's all about slights and perceived slights. Like, I know maybe this is just kind of framing it and with Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, and everybody remembers how it became obvious how much he needed something to just make him the fearful assassin that he was.
Right.
And just to kind of motivate him. It's like, oh, you didn't say good morning, or you said good morning to me the wrong way. Well, guess what? I'm going to drop 40 on you. Like, you couldn't win, but that's what he does. And Jimmy has followed that same path. Like, he hasn't always been the best regular season player, because the regular season doesn't always matter to him. And it's not always so easy to kind of manufacture these perceived slights in order to use that as fuel. But he's always found motivation, especially on a night like tonight. You figured he would want to show up pat, that he'd want to show up the whole team, that he'd have something to bark at, that he'd yell at Bam Adebayo, that he'd look over at Spo and said, "You go use Tyler over me," etc. Like, we didn't see any of that. He looked humbled. He looked kind of shaken. He looked like he was kind of scared of the moment.
I think he shut down. I think he shut down the emotions. Right. It's the Heat finally. The thing I've been begging them to do, let the emotions in, feel it, feel your pain, feel something, bleed your own blood. It's okay. And then harness it, use it. And Jimmy Butler didn't. Jimmy Butler said, I'm going to shut everything off. I'm not going to feel the weight of this moment. And and I don't even necessarily blame him for that. That's a totally human thing that you don't want to be encountering right now because of everything and how all of it went down.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also look at some futures, like for Major League Baseball. How about that? The most popular future bet in all of Major League Baseball. The Cincinnati Reds to hit their over on the win total. FanDuel has the Reds over under 79.5. My producer would like to mention that he has smashed this over, FYI. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
Maryland basketball will have to be much better to beat the Florida Gators.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps.
We've seen a really solid tournament so far from Maryland basketball. Probably one of the more exciting tournaments, exciting tournament teams that we've seen. And right now, Maryland basketball is kind of the talk of the town. even on kind of a national media level. I'm turning on ESPN and all these different like shows that's usually mainly about main sports stories like it'll be about the NFL and like huge stories in the NBA and those different things. They're not usually touching too much on college basketball. But right now, obviously, it's March Madness. There's not a whole lot else going on besides the NBA regular season. And Maryland basketball has been on the front of a lot of media and everything like that, which has been really cool to see. But it's been a really exciting tournament so far for Maryland basketball. I thought we played a really good first game against Grand Canyon, and then we had the most exciting game. I don't even know if you could argue it. I think the most exciting game so far in the tournament against Colorado State, and I'm just so glad that we were on the right side of things with the Queen buzzer beater. There's a lot of different things going on. Did he travel? That's kind of what a lot of the media is talking about. I've heard that conversation a lot. Before we talk about it more, I do kind of want to talk about, was it a travel? Was it not? And honestly, I don't know. I don't know. It does kind of look like he takes 3 steps when you just watch the video, but I'm also like a little bit unclear of the rule. I guess in college there's no gather step. Like it's a little confusing. But I've seen Queen do this interesting footwork all year where it's like, is he getting away with steps or is his footwork just that good? I lean towards the second one because he's been doing that kind of stuff all year where looks like he sneaks in a third step, whatever the case is. To me, it doesn't really matter, though. The refs weren't going to call that in game. And if they called that in game, I think Kevin Willard would have brought down the building with how mad he would have been if they called a travel in game. Like, you're not going to call travel in that moment unless it's like blatantly obvious that it's a travel. And in that situation, in real time, there's no way you see that. So I want to start there. The Derek Queen travel thing, yeah, like technically, probably, maybe, possibly it was a travel, but I don't care anymore. I'm not going to let that negate the moment. I'm not going to let that lower how cool of a moment that was for Maryland basketball because we think possibly Queen traveled a little bit or he added an extra step. Like that was still an insane shot, like the Colorado State coach said. Still a really tough shot to hit in a really exciting moment for Derek Queen and the whole Maryland team. But I'm going to go ahead and say this. Maryland basketball will have to be much better, and maybe play their best game of the year to beat the Florida Gators. Florida is hot right now. Florida's playing probably the best basketball of any team in the country right now. They're just on another level in terms of how they play, how hard they play, in terms of their shooting ability. They're probably the best player in the country, arguably right now. But Florida basketball, it feels like they're kind of the team to beat right now in the tournament. Obviously, you could also say a team like Duke, a team like Auburn, but I'd say those 3 teams right now are really like the cream of the crop, the teams to beat, and probably the best 3 teams in the tournament. But we've seen Florida so far. We saw Florida obviously have a really easy first game, but the UConn game, man, that was tight, close game, back and forth. Really interesting the entire game. I thought UConn was going to win it, and I thought we were going to have a chance to take down the defending champs, but Florida found a way to get it going. And I just think this. I thought Maryland had an interesting game against Colorado State because, like I said on the last episode, if you look at the box score and really look at it, it's kind of like, did Maryland really play that bad? How did they only win this game by 1 point? We nearly outshot them by like 21%, I think it was, from the 3-point arc. We didn't turn over the ball or something. Like there was a lot of different things where I was like, this is weird that this game was close. And sometimes you're going to have games like that where you can't quite put your finger on why it was close, why this happened, why that. But all I know is this. Colorado State does not compare to the Florida team. Florida is miles better than Colorado State. They just are. They're deeper. They're more complete. They have more star power. They're more athletic. They're technically they're probably better than us right now, I would say. In the way Maryland played against Colorado State, not that it was terrible. Like we got the win, But you're just going to have to be so much better. Specifically, I thought we shot pretty well from three. I mean, 41%, but we got to be a lot better in 2-point areas. We're going to have to shoot the ball much better from 2-point spots against Florida if we want to have a shot to win this game. But Florida, like I said, they're playing some of the best basketball you'll see a team play. And so it's not even close. Maryland's going to have to be so much better against Florida. And when I think about Colorado State, their best player was this Clifford guy, and I think Clifford is good. He might be an NBA player and all those different things. But at the end of the day, Maryland basketball has arguably is playing the best team, the best player in the country. In this Walter Clayton kid, he looks like potentially the best player in college basketball right now. Walter Clayton Jr. When I watch him, I'm like, am I watching Steph Curry? Am I watching Walter Clayton? I don't know, because this kid right now is playing at an all-time high level. In Florida, or excuse me, Colorado State didn't have a guy like that. That could shoot the ball like that at the guard spot, that could score on his own like that, that if you leave him open, if you give him any inch, he's going to hit the shot. I'm telling you, what he's been doing feels Steph Curry-ish for Florida basketball. And the way he kind of plays, it kind of reminds me of it. I don't know if other people are seeing that, but that's kind of how I see it. And to me right now, you're going to have to play a lot better. I thought Maryland defensively wasn't awesome against Colorado State. I thought it was okay. I thought we could have been better. But I just think that when we look at how Walter Clayton and the Florida team shoots the ball, and how some of their guards shoot the ball from the 3-point arc, you're going to have to be a lot better against Florida to be able to take them down. Walter Clayton in his last game, 36 minutes, 5 of 8 from the 3-point line, 23 points. He's a guy that if we let go off, he potentially could kill us. He also had 5 turnovers, though, against UConn. So you can get this guy a little unraveled. Obviously, he's probably going to get his. You might be in a pretty good spot. But even the line on FanDuel represents that Maryland's going to have to play much better game to win the game. We were 7.5-point favorites against Colorado State. That flips itself upside down. Basically, we're 6.5 dogs against Florida, and right there that shows that if you play a similar game against Colorado State, you'll probably end up losing by a good 10 points. That's just like what the line represents and what everything shows right now. But they're just the best team. They're playing like the best team in the country. There's not a ton to have to sugarcoat this. They're playing like elite basketball right now, and you're just going to have to be on your A game with how Florida's shooting the ball, with how they're rebounding it. They have a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. On the year, they're 35% from the 3-point arc. They just do a lot of things well. And so I just think Maryland's got to play their best basketball to be able to win this, and they have to play better than they did against Colorado State. But let me add on a point. I don't want anybody to think that Maryland winning this game will be insane. It's not some crazy upset. It's not some crazy thing that shouldn't happen. I think Maryland compares to Florida talent-wise. I think Florida does a couple things a little bit better than us, and I would definitely give them a bit of the edge. But I don't want to make this seem like it's some huge upset or this is some impossible game and Maryland's going to have to play an insane game to beat these Florida Gators. Like, no, I don't think that's the case. I think Florida's good, but I don't think they're that good in terms of they're not like an NBA team. And that's more of me respecting Maryland and not giving less credit to Florida. Obviously, like I said, they're one of the best teams in the country, but I think Maryland's up there as well and can compete with anybody. And so to me, Maryland's going to have to play their best game potentially of the year, but you could say the same thing about Florida. If Florida doesn't have a great game, Maryland's going to beat them. If Florida plays mediocre, it's going to be really tough for them to overcome this Maryland team. And so I do think Maryland has to play much better than they did against Colorado State, because beating Colorado State by 1 point isn't going to cut it. That type of performance isn't going to cut it against Florida. But I also want to make sure you guys know that Florida's got to play a good game too to beat this Maryland team. This isn't some slide away game for Florida where they just are able to get things done and figure it out. Like, that's not what this is. And UConn showed some weaknesses against Florida, and UConn probably should have won that game. And so I think Maryland should take some of that. But I do think Maryland's going to have the chance to win this game. I'm just hoping we come out with a good game plan. But I trust Kevin Willard, man, right now.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also look at some futures, like for Major League Baseball. How about that? The most popular future bet in all of Major League Baseball. The Cincinnati Reds to hit their over on the win total. FanDuel has the Reds over under 79.5. My producer would like to mention that he has smashed this over, FYI. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Texas Tech is really going to have to get going in order to find a way to be successful in this matchup. And, of course, if you will indulge me, and maybe the audience as well, Chris, I'd like to bother you with a question about our guy Chance McMillan again. I know I've been checking in with you every 15 minutes. You have asked me to stop. I think I was even blocked at one point in time, though we've opened those communication lines back open in order to record this show. Surprise, I'm going to ask you while I got you here. So hang tight for that in just a moment. But how about that full look at the Razorbacks? It was just a taste yesterday, but as you were diving further into previewing these Hawks, what are you finding?
Well, you find because it's been well documented. This has been of a weird season for Arkansas. Starting out 0-5 in the league and in the SEC, and then I think that they have dealt with some injuries along the way. Adu Thero and Boogie Fland, kind of two of their top scorers, have missed a significant amount of time, and Thero may in fact be back Thursday night. I think Fland he's thought to be a potential lottery pick, and he just returned. And they had, without Thero, they're 6-2, and he is kind of a power forward, plays great away from the ball and does a lot of things. And he was kind of a leading scorer, he was. And Fland maybe the best pro prospect on their team. So they've done a lot of what they've done here without a lot of those two leading scorers at different points. And I think what's fascinating is as they incorporate them back into the equation, how does it affect their rotation? Does it? Who had an increased role now? Who must kind of step back? That's probably John Calipari's main problem. Not that it's a problem. I'm sure he'd rather it be a problem than getting to deal with that. But they are like natural talent.
That can be tough, right? Like a reinsertion,
sure,
and of some ultra talented guys to boot when you've got a rhythm kind of with this group.
Yeah, I don't disagree, because somebody's minutes suffer, and I think it's you try to explain to them and from a mindset standpoint, hey man, this is a good thing. You're not going to play as many minutes. It's a good thing. But so I think that's the potentially Arkansas's challenge, but they've going to more than likely have a few more pieces available at full strength. And who starts, who plays, who's in the rotation, who gets squeezed, it remains to be seen. But the natural talent, this is going to be one of the most talented teams you play all year. They're just young, and it's a bit unrealized in some ways. But this is also going to be one of the biggest teams you play. So this is similar to the way Houston is built, or the way Arizona is built, or the way Kansas is built. Just you're dealing with big and tall. Across the board. I mean, they've got a guard that's 6'2", but then everybody else is Fland is not as big, but everybody else is. You've got a couple of 7-footers, you've got some 6'9s, you've got 6'6" on the wing. I mean, you've got this. They're going to look the part, I guess is what I'm saying. And so Who they are, though, is that I think they need you to screw it up on offense, and they need you to turn it over to create transition opportunities. They are talented enough to clean up a lot of messes with some defensive mistakes around the rim. They block close to six shots a game. I think they had 7 blocks versus St. John's. So they could screw it up out near the perimeter and then clean it up near the rim. And so I see Elijah Hawkins getting to the bucket and kind of doing his thing? Probably not in this game. That'll be a bit trickier for people getting to the rim. It'll be trickier for JT Toppin operating around the paint. But
can I ask you something about that?
Sure.
Because we brought that up, I think, either in yesterday's conversation or maybe 2 episodes ago, and talking about the differences in round 1 and round 2 and kind of what was there given the matchup for Tech. And I talked about some perceived swing maybe back to the perimeter just because of what I had seen from Arkansas size-wise. And if I remember right, you were sort of quick to push back on that maybe as far as some opportunities at the rim. So why is it with those measurables that we know are there, why do you still maybe think there's some opportunity there? Is it just how good they are, or is there some other aspect of the matchup?
I think, like, in other words, I think that the way you played your games in Wichita were like opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
It was heavily perimeter and heavily paint. I think this will be a mixture. I don't foresee it being. I think it's somewhere in the meaty middle there.
Okay.
Because I think that there's probably an arrogance that comes with Arkansas and Calipari, and I think JT will have one-on-one opportunities in the paint. I think you'll be able to, he'll be able to go one-on-one, and we'll see, what he can do with that. I just don't envision them like committing to double and triple teams. So that may somewhat limit your ability to play inside out if they're not going to leave shooters and they're going to, may just be JT. Let's see what you can do. Potential first round pick and have at it. But I do think you'll get some looks from deep, and it's just a matter of what you do with them. But like, you just played 2 games in Wichita and you had 34 assists to 12 turnovers. I do think Arkansas struggles to score. I do think they need to get out and run. They want to do this. Yeah. I think if you lined, these 15 to 16 players that would potentially play in this game up, and you're out there and like, hey, let's pick teams, guys. I could see a lot of Arkansas's guys being picked before yours. You know what I'm saying? Based on upside and talent and measurables and all these things. But I think you're connected. You're well coached and all those things. Not that Arkansas is not, but I think that youth shows up with Arkansas at times. So you're going to see their upside at times where they look like this scary, scary team. And then they're going to have these moments where they go through these droughts. They really struggle to shoot it from the perimeter. I'm not so sure that Texas Tech won't try to kind of go under screens and do some things to dare them to shoot it from the perimeter and say, if you want to beat us in a 3-point shooting contest, we're going to dare you to. Like, we're going to try to, play off a bit and kind of play drop coverage and do some of those things.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also look at some futures, like for Major League Baseball. How about that? The most popular future bet in all of Major League Baseball. The Cincinnati Reds to hit their over on the win total. FanDuel has the Reds over under 79.5. My producer would like to mention that he has smashed this over, FYI. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
I want to take a minute and crow a little bit about BYU's head coach. Kevin Young has been just absolutely awesome. Let's remember, he has not even been on the job at BYU for a full year. That would come next month, is the full year, the 1 year anniversary of his taking the job at BYU. And BYU paid a pretty penny, reportedly north of $4 million, to yank him out of the NBA and make him the head coach of BYU. It is every dime that BYU required to get him to Provo has been repaid, if not tenfold at this point. The exposure, the accomplishments, everything that Kevin Young has accomplished as BYU's head coach, as a rookie head coach, might I add, has been awesome. And I know I'm getting up in my feels when I talk about stuff like this, but the nice part about a guy like Kevin Young is you can tell that he is wholly unsatisfied until he wins the whole thing. He wants to win a national championship. He wants to win national championships with the BYU basketball program. Now, the question I will posit there is, if he were to pull off a national championship, would he remain at BYU long enough to win national championships? Because I also understand that with his track record of success as a high-level developer of talent in the NBA, what he's proven at BYU already, you got to think there's going to be NBA teams who will be like, hey, Kevin, you interested in coming back to the pro game, and we'll pay you $8, $9, $10 million? That's not out of the realm of possibility in the NBA, folks. We're talking about NBA coaches who are making tens of millions of dollars annually. And that's BYU. They may have infinite funds for player acquisition. Do they have infinite funds for a coach? Now, that's a conversation for down the road, because I don't think he's going to spurn BYU after just 1 year. I think it would take a little bit of time, because I think his wife, speaking of Kevin Young, they really like being at BYU. He talked about the fact he was excited to take the job at BYU because, yes, being a coach is tough. There's a lot of hours required watching film and all that. But the nice part is, as a coach in the NBA, you're on the road, I don't know how many days of the year, and you're spending time in a hotel room away from your family. With college basketball, you play twice, 3 times at the most in a week. And a lot of times, at least one of those games is at home. So you get extra downtime with your wife and kids. Yes, you may have to step into your office to break down film and all that stuff. You may take phone calls, talking to recruits, but you're still at home. You're still around your family. And that's, I think, a major, major part of why Kevin Young came to BYU in the first place. And I think a big part of why he's not going to be super eager to jump back to the NBA. Now, once again, money would talk, but what he has accomplished, truthfully, what he has accomplished in less than a year at the helm of the BYU basketball program is absolutely incredible. It's historic type stuff. Legend status is already being bestowed upon him. Who would have thought that after Mark Pope left BYU, there was some question, okay, can they pick up the pieces? Can they keep this thing going? They just had a breakthrough in their first year in the Big 12 Conference. What's it going to take BYU and keep that rolling where they're at right now? Well, Kevin Young took what BYU was at, added to it, and just like increased it by, I don't know, tenfold. It feels like. It is absolutely masterful to watch him go about his job in game. He is an in-game savant. His after timeout calls, his ability to adjust on the fly. He will call timeouts at any point during the shot clock if he feels like he has something that inspired him and say, hey, I want to call timeout. I want to dry something up here. And more often than not, it works. We had Trevin Nell on with DJ and PK, my radio station, the KSL Sports Zone, and he talked about what Kevin Young has meant to him. He said, we go in practice, and Kevin Young will draw up a play and says, I get the same shot, the same look, and it's a perfect look every single time. He's a master at doing this. It's awesome to hear a guy like Trevin Nell talk about that, because the so-called shot doctor that people like to call Trevin, he needs good looks to tee him up. But if you can generate those time and time again, that means it's a system that works. And that's what Kevin Young has brought to the BYU basketball program. Yes, Kevin Young deserves everything that's coming to him. I would wholeheartedly endorse BYU already beginning negotiations on a new contract with Kevin Young to make sure that he is wholly satisfied being in Provo, Utah for the long term. And he's wanting to do what BYU hopes to accomplish. And that is make it to a Final Four, win a national championship, things that BYU basketball has not experienced. Kevin Young sure looks like he has the chops to get it done. Yes, something could cause that to be short-circuited. We all know that. Injury, downright bad luck. There's so many different things that go into that, but so long as Kevin Young continues to do what he's doing and he continues to add the talent that BYU appears to have coming in the form of AJ DeBonsa, as well as the other guys coming in to this program, it sure feels like the good times are ready to roll for quite some time, so long as Kevin Young is happy being in Provo. Yeah, it may require a couple of raises here or there to make sure that the status quo stays the status quo for BYU, but the status quo right now, it's pretty dang awesome, and you better keep it going. That's an unsolicited advice from me to whoever gets the athletic director job at BYU, whether it's Brian Santiago, Tom Holm, I don't care who's it running things at BYU, Keith Vorking, Shane Reese. All y'all need to make sure that KYU, he's happy, he's rewarded, and he's getting the things he needs to succeed at BYU. BYU basketball obviously is riding high right now. BYU football is also riding high. Your two chief revenue generating sports need to have the most resources allocated to them to continue to do just that. I love the fact that BYU, from my vantage point, and trust me, I'm sitting here in my home studio here in Saratoga Springs, Utah, talking about this. But from my vantage point, BYU has not been this in on college sports, and most particularly football and basketball, since the 1980s, when they won a national title in college football and obviously had some incredible runs with the teams of the 80s in basketball. It's felt like at times during the 20-aughts that there have been administrations at BYU, the board of trustees, etc., who have been like, is sports really worth it? It feels that way. I don't have any inside intel on that. It's just like I said, my vantage point, my perception is they've been a little bit out on college sports. Whereas right now, they're all in on it, and they should remain all in on it for the long haul. It is a major, major missionary tool. I'll point you directly to guys like Rondo Philberg, who can point you to more in-depth conversation about this. But they say when BYU's winning it big, and they talk about winning big in football and basketball, missionaries have more success. There's more people interested in hearing about the message of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that all comes back to the job that Kevin Young is doing as BYU's head coach. We are lucky to have him at the helm of this program. I would have never thought a year ago when he was hired that he would do what he's accomplished already for BYU. And there is still more that he could do in the next few days. Wow. What a run. What a fun time. And let's all celebrate what BYU is doing right now with Kevin Young at the helm of this program, and be happy that he wanted to be a BYU, because he made it very clear that he could have stuck around in the NBA. He could have been an NBA head coach, and he decided, you know what? I'm going to step away from what looks like a career arc of going to the NBA, and I'm going to go take a bet and see what I can do at BYU. And man, what an incredible match it has been for BYU and Kevin Young so far. And here's hoping it continues for the long haul.